Welcome back. In the last video, I gave you an overview of the report design environment where you can design pretty much any report that you need from your data. And in this video, I'd like to show you how to actually create one. One of the reports that you might need for a public library is an overdue items report. You want to see which items have been kept out for longer than they should have been, and you'll probably want details on the books and the customers as well. So let's go ahead and create one right now. As I said in the last couple videos, you probably shouldn't base forms and reports directly from the tables themselves. One thing that you can do is to create a query that will gather the data and enable you to create whatever form or report is needed. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So let's go ahead and click Create, and I'll click Query Design. For the overdue checkouts report, we're of course going to need the checkouts table. We're going to need information on the book and the customer who checked it out. So I've added those to the query by double clicking on them, and as you can see, it placed them in here in the query design environment, and it's already plotted out the relationships between the tables that we defined when we designed them. And what I'm going to do now is start selecting the fields. So the first thing I want is the book. I want to know which book was checked out. So I'll go ahead and select the book ID from TBL checkouts, and then I'm going to select the book title, and that's probably the only field that I'm going to need from the books, although I could put in checkout days. And then I'm going to select customer ID. We want to know who has it checked out. And I'm going to select the last name, first name, and maybe the phone if you're calling them. Maybe the email, probably be sending an email of some kind. And then I'm going to select the due date and checked in, which indicates whether the book has been checked in or not. Let's go ahead and maximize this so that we can see the fields a little bit better. So now we have all the information that we'll probably need. Now we have to specify the criteria and the sorting of the query. So I'm going to take a look at these fields, and the first one that I want to look at is the due date. What we really need are books where the due date is prior to today's date. So let's say less than date, and again the date function returns the current date, and don't forget to add the parentheses after it because that's what actually marks it as a function. And I'm going to say checked in is null, which means that there's no value there, because again checked in is a date field which indicates the date that the item was checked in. So if that's null, it means it has not been returned. So now we have a query that's pulling these fields for any records in TBL checkouts where the due date is prior to today's date and it has not been checked in. And that's how queries work. You're essentially telling them what records to select, and you're providing them with the criteria to select those records. Now we want to look at sorting, see how we want to sort this query. Now you can specify a different sorting order for the query than for the report that you're going to design, but there's a chance that you might want to look at the query itself. So it's a good idea to have some kind of sort order specified. And in this case, I'm going to sort by the due date. And I'm going to sort ascending so that I see the oldest due dates first. I want to know which ones are most out of date. And let's go ahead and view this query. Click on View, and we can see that we have several books overdue. Checkout days are 14 days again, and in my sample data I actually put 7 days, but all of these books are obviously severely overdue, so there needs to be some kind of action on them. And I'm going to go ahead and add one more field now that I've thought about it. I'm going to specify circulation, and I'm going to say true. Now, circulation, again, is the field which specifies whether a book is still in circulation. So I just specified true, and you could also say yes, or true, or does not equal 0. 0 would be false. And actually, I'm going to leave it as does not equal 0, which is a good way of saying it's true, because sometimes you could have 1 or negative 1, depending on how your field is set up. So if you're saying not 0, that means not false. So that's a good habit to get into when specifying true. So let's take a look at that again. We still have 8 records. Now let's go to the books table and let's take a look at these. This one has been overdue since April of 2015. So we're going to assume that it's lost, and I'm going to come over here and take that out of circulation and close that, and let's refresh that query. I just hit F5 to refresh it, and as you can see, that book has been taken off the report because we've marked it as out of circulation, and that's what that field did. So that's our query right now that we're going to use for the report. And let me go back to design view. Let me minimize that. And now let's go to create and report wizard. Again, you have a wizard that will probably save you some time when you're just starting out for creating reports, just like you do with the forms. Let's do the report wizard. And it's asking us to save the query. So I'm going to say query overdue. And it's showing query overdue as one of the available data sources. It shows all the tables and queries in the database, or at least the select queries. So I'll select query overdue, and I'm just going to go ahead and make all fields available to the report. Click next, and I'm going to leave that as a default. I'm going to show it by checkouts, and we can actually see more information here. So if you're using the wizard, it's a good idea to look over this information and see how it can group the data for you. But for right now, I'm just going to leave it as it is. Click next, and this is asking if we want to add any grouping levels. You can group by more than one field if you want, and one example might be the due date. If you have a lot of books for each specific date, you might want to group by the date, but I'm just going to leave it as it is right now, and we'll change that later. I'll show you how to change that in the report. Click next, and you can also sort. Again, the report can have its own sort order, so you can choose the field that you're sorting on, and I'll just leave it at due date and ascending. Next, and again, you have different formats for the reports that you can use. You can do portrait or landscape, and you can do it by columns, you do it by tabular or a justified report. I'll leave it in columns for now, and you can adjust the field width for the different fields so that it all fits on a page. And next, and I'm going to call this report overdue. And I want to preview the report, so finish. Okay, so now we have the overdue report. It's showing all the information from that query. And that's not quite the format that I was hoping for. That's the column format that I specified, but that's not quite what I was looking for. But we can take a look at the design real quick by right-clicking and selecting design view, and you can see here how it's set up. You have the report header with the title. It's just used the name as a title, so overdue books. And then what it's done is laid out every field from the query within the detail of the report. You have the page header. We could actually fix this manually, and maybe I'll show you how to do that first before redoing it. But it's laid out all the fields, and it simply put them in the detail, so it repeats that section again and again. And instead of going back and redoing this report, what I think I will do is show you how to fix this so that it shows a report that's a little bit more useful instead of having those huge listings. And it will take up quite a lot less pages by doing that. But as you can see, it has the report header, the page header where you can actually put the report title on each page if you wanted to. It has the time it was printed, which is again by the now function, and it has the page numbers. And in another video I'll show you more detail on inserting those manually if you have to. The controls are actually up here. You can insert those if they're not already there. But let's go ahead and rearrange these fields now. And I'm going to do this pretty quick. I'm just going to select each label, do Control X to cut, and then paste it into the page header. And first, let's go ahead and select all of them, right click, and size to fit. So that shortens them up. And let's also get rid of the ones we don't actually need. I made them all available. That doesn't mean that the report has to display everything. Let's get rid of the book ID. That's not needed. Let's get rid of the checkout days. Don't really need the customer ID because the customer ID again is just the primary key. It doesn't have any specific meaning to the users. We know that checked in is null, so that's always going to show null, and we know that circulation has to be true, so that doesn't have to show either. So let's get rid of those. And I just realized that there's one more field that I might want to show. So I'm going to save this for now, and then I'm going to open the query overdue again, and I'm going to add asset tag. So there's a pretty good chance that if it's overdue, you might want to see the asset tag, at least for this library that keeps them. So let's go ahead and save that. Coming up here to the Design tab, let's take a look at Add Existing Fields. And as you can see, it's already added asset tag to the available field list. So let's drag that over there. And let's go ahead and edit some of these labels. Then I'm going to move these labels up to the page header. Now I'm going to move these fields around so that they line up more or less with the labels in the header. And this is going to be very flexible in the way that these fields are displayed. So we probably want to have the asset tag and the book title on the first row, and then everything else on the second row. So we can do that. That's not a problem. Let me go ahead and move these around some more. And you can also add a separator line to clarify things a little bit. And now that that's all set up, we can actually shrink this detail section, because the detail section is going to represent each record on the report. The size of that section is going to determine how much space the report allows for that record. So we want to go ahead and shrink that so that the report will be a bit shorter. Now, this might not be the ideal format, but for a quick and dirty report, it gets the information across. And I'll go ahead and shrink the header a bit too. And let's take a look at what that looks like. Go to View, Print Preview. Okay, so that's a quick report that shows all the information, and I don't like the border around that asset tag, so let's go ahead and close the print preview. Let's select the field, And you can see here that the border style is solid. So I'm going to choose transparent. And let's take a look at that again. And you can see that the border is gone. Now, this is probably not the most readable format. It's not aligning these fields in a way that's going to be easy for a lot of people to read. So let's take a look at the alignment on this. For due date, let's go to Format, and let's just go ahead and select them all and align left on those. Let's save and go to Design and Print Preview. That's a little bit better. At least it's left aligning the dates. Now the next thing I want to look at is the person's name. This might be a little bit hard to read for some people, so I'm going to combine it into one text box, and let's take a look at the way that's presented in the design. Let's close the print preview. It's shown in two different text boxes, and what I'm going to do is get rid of this one. I'm going to expand this one a little bit, and then I'm going to change the control source. Now, the first thing you need to do is actually change the name of the control itself. And let me show you what happens when you don't. First, I'm going to use the build button. And I'm going to select from the overdue report object. I'm going to take this out. Right now, it's looking at the last name field as the control source. I'm going to click on field list under expression categories. And I'm going to select last name. I'm going to double click. Then I'm going to type in the ampersand. I'm going to add a comma in quotation marks. Those are double quotes. Another ampersand, and then first name. I double clicked on that. Now what that should do is print the last name with a comma, then the first name. Click OK. It's saying equals. Seems happy, but over here it's saying it's a circular reference because it's getting confused with the name of the control. So let me show you what that's going to look like. View, yeah, that's the error that you'll see. And when you're first starting out, you're designing some of your early reports, you might see this. So it's good that you see this now to recognize what it means. It just puts that # type exclamation point in there. Let's go back to design view and let's change the name of the control itself. We're still focused on the name control, and I'm going to say full name, and let's go ahead and print preview. It's still saying type. Close. And see what it's done here. It's actually changed the formula that I put in there to replace it with full name instead of last name. So I'm going to change this back to last name. And you can see it actually offers to complete it for you. Oops, get that out of there. There we go. So that's the basic formula. It's just the field name with some additional formatting. The ampersand is a concatenation character. It simply combines two values into one. So it's not too hard to actually do some really nice things with just a few symbols and, again, the expression builder. So now that's showing last name plus first name. The error is gone. Let's go ahead and expand that. And let's click View. Now you can see that it's actually combined them into one field. And let's go to Design View, Customer Name. Let's duplicate this, and I just did Control C and Control V there to copy that. Book title, and go to Print Preview, and that's somewhat better. That's a little easier to read. But now we have that extra space, and I just thought of another field that I might want to put in there. So let's go to Close Print Preview. Let's go to the Query Overdue query, and I want the person's card number in there too. So I'll just double click on that. It's added it to the query. Save the query. And if we go to Design, Add Existing Fields, you can see the card number is already there. Drop that in there. Actually, I'll have to do a little bit of rearranging here and just drop that in there. Do a Control X, Control V, and let's hit Design, Format. Let's align that properly. Move these two fields over. And let's take a look at the design and the print preview again. And again, it's showing that border, so let's go ahead and get rid of that border. Let's go ahead and select the control. Border style transparent. And let's take a look at that again. So now we have the Overdue Books report, and that didn't take long at all to create. I had to fiddle with it a little bit to get it exactly right, but we have a very nice, neat, useful report. It's sorted by the due date, so we can look at the earliest due dates first. And at a glance, we can see the title, the customer, their card number, and their contact information. So that's a nice, simple, basic report that we put together pretty quick. So it's really not difficult to design reports and pull your data back together in Access after you've laid it out in the tables, as we saw earlier. And as you get practice, you'll see some of the things that you can do with Access reports. Access is really known for its reporting capabilities. And if we scroll down here, you can see that it has the date that it was run, the page 1 of 1, and again, let me take a look at that in Design View. That's showing the formatting. Again, you see the ampersand character, and it inserts the word of in there with the appropriate codes. So that's Access reporting, and in other lessons I'll go into more detail about some of the other controls that you can put in there and some of the advanced features that you can build into your reports.